Hey there everyone, Kyle here. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to be really drawing anything. Instead, I'm going to be going over the notes that I took while I was at a Kim Jung Gi workshop on July 8th, 28th, something like that. So at that workshop there were these two speakers. Hyunjin Kim went first, and then there was a small break, and then Kim Jung Gi did his thing. So I'm gonna actually start by showing the drawing that I did that morning. So these three people, these people were drawn at the coffee shop that I went to in the morning. Just a coffee shop kind of near where the workshop was being held. And then the rest of these drawings were done at the workshop. This was all drawn from my seat, as were the ones over here. This was just kind of a doodle. So then Hyunjin Kim got up and started talking. This was his first slide. His talk was mostly about the proportions of the human skull, and was talking about how the proportions break down. So this was the first big part. His instructions were basically, so to start out, you can draw a square, this, and then you can divide that square into thirds, I think it was. Might have been half. And then within those, yeah, you can see the skull here, or the square here. So he divided it in half vertically, and then I think it actually was half horizontally as well. And then about here, he said once you divide this into thirds, that's about where the hairline's going to be. And then if you divide this into thirds, this is like where the bottom of the nose is going to be. So from there, you can kind of draw out the outline of the nose, and that goes roughly where that third would break down. And then from there, you can take this area and draw the eyes. And he basically described the eyes as looking kind of like sunglasses. And something that he really wanted to get across was that there's this backwards shape. If you look at the eye socket from the side, it's not just a flat plane. It goes back in space. So that's something that he really wanted to get across. So once you have this stuff, you can see that this comes down. This would all be within the eye socket. The bottom of the nose is kind of like a heart. And then he was saying that from there you can do another third? Trying to remember all these measurements from my head. It's a little hard. I think it was like another third, and then that's like where the bottom of the jaw would be. So, trying to look at what this one looks like too. So, from here, gonna come in. So there's 3 front teeth. The third one is the canine. And then he was saying that most people in Korea, similar to America, get their wisdom teeth removed. So there's only 4 additional teeth. So that's 28 teeth total. He polled the audience of like how we thought of how many teeth there were, and the guy that answered said 32, which is what the number would be if you had your wisdom teeth still. So actually it might have been another half now that I'm looking at it here. I think I got that wrong. So from this, oh, he also mentioned that these have kind of a downward slant. And he wanted to communicate the roundness of the forehead. Well, and this is mostly just like the face. The head gets kind of added around this. So from here, the jaw, like that. And then there's this kind of bone hook that goes behind where the jawbone joins. So this goes back as well. I don't know why I did this so close to the edge. So during this, he was kind of like asking questions of the audience and having people answer like how many teeth, and like showing us where this has like a ridge here. And then he really wanted to indicate that that ridge in this region is a signifier that this is like a 3D shape. So if you were to look at it from the front, it'd be like this, and that part sticks out. That's what that's trying to indicate there. And then this is showing that teeth thing that I was talking about. So there's 3 on the front and then 4 molars on the side, and that creates the full jaw of teeth. He also mentioned that the teeth never line up completely. So like your canines will be kind of like that, and these front teeth kind of interlock. Another thing that I thought was really good and pretty interesting is that if you think about, oh, bad line. If you think about the eye sockets like this, like let's say that they're carved out of a shape. If you have like a block of wood and you drill the front out so it looks like this, if you cut that at an angle, like this, you end up with a shape that's similar to how the eyes are, where it's like this part that goes back would be like this part that's cut off. And that gets you your eye sockets that have this concave area. So I think I do have the measurements on this effed up a little bit, but you can look up head proportions. On your own. Another thing that he mentioned was that the front teeth overlap the back teeth. So if you were to like take the teeth and unwrap them, the front teeth are kind of like this, and the back teeth kind of go like that. So the front teeth kind of hang down when the jaw is closed in front of the back teeth. That's trying to show here. So that's basically it for this first page. Let me delete this stuff. And again, this is what Kim was talking about. And I'm sorry for not remembering all of the divide up lines for this. I tried to take notes on it, but it's hard to remember all that stuff. Something I need to study myself a lot more. Okay, so the next page he kind of like went off into a bunch of different stuff. I'm gonna hide his name again. So this is just like a drawing of him on the stage. But he was trying to get across like how the teeth overlap, and he kind of compared it to like a soda bottle top and how you should draw them. So you should be able to see that the teeth start in this like glancing angle, and then as they get more towards the front, it's more facing you. So he had us draw something like this. He didn't have us draw it, but he drew it himself. It's like, and then this would overlap on the bottom teeth. So then he started to get into the shape of the jaw. And the shape of the jaw is basically like a flat side plane that kind of curves around to the front. And then there's this flat section that would have the chin. And then that kind of goes behind again. And there's like a divot there. And that the teeth sit atop this shape. But that's fairly simple. So if you look at someone from the side, you can kind of see where that jaw would be. This is the front shape right here. This is the side shape, and this is that back shape. So he started to kind of just get into random stuff now. So he drew this and this. Oh, that's not a good indication of it. Hold on. I'm also using a different drawing glove, so I can't undo in the same way that I normally do right now. It's a little weird. But he was saying, you bend your arm like this, and your bicep sort of flexes. He was like, which one of these is right? Should your arm have this flat spot or should it not? And then he said that if if you look at your own arm, if you bend it, you can see that if your palm is up, that you do get this flat spot here. But if your palm is down, you don't get that flat spot. That's what these two drawings are showing here, which I had never really thought about, but that's pretty cool. This was just showing how the muscles are attached, and I'm not even positive I got this right, but your bicep kind of comes around from the back of this bone, and then there's like a part that's attached to the front, and then there's a second muscle that connects to the smaller of the bones. And the way that this hinge works is kind of like a fold. So as it folds on top, when you twist your arm, this becomes more of an easy shape like this. And then when it's up and your arm is relaxed like this, it ends up flexing those and making this kind of bulge shape here. That's kind of how he explained it. I think I'm getting that mostly right. More right than the proportions of the skull, anyway. So then he started talking about the muscles of the face. I have another whole page dedicated to this, but he was saying, like, as you raise your eyebrow, the muscles here are connected to like your brow ridge, basically, and that when you raise them, because muscles can only contract, it causes the skin to kind of do this, and that's where you get like your forehead wrinkles from when you raise your eyebrow. And then he was saying that this muscle is connected like that, so when you bring your eyebrow down and inwards, it creates this shape. And that's how you can pull your eyebrows together. Alright. This page was continuing Hyunjin Kim's talk, but also I doodled Kim Jung Gi over the break. So this is going more into the muscles. So he said around the eyes and around the mouth, the muscles are circular. So when you pull in, that's how you can make all the mouth forms. And if these muscles pull up, there's a lot of like muscle ends here. So when you pull this up, that's where you get those like divots on the bottom like of your chin. That's what that was supposed to be. So this is just showing where a bunch of other muscle connections are. So there's these ones I talked about before, these ones that help you raise your eyebrow, this circular set around the eyes, that when they contract you can get crow's feet, and then how your eyeball interacts here. That's why you have this like divot. It's because your eyeball is coming in and the skin kind of goes like that. Something else that was good is you mentioned that wrinkles are always perpendicular to the muscle. So if my muscles are going this way, the wrinkles will be this direction. So that's a good thing to understand. So as my muscles are going like this, that's why I get these perpendicular lines when I get wrinkles. Let me erase. So this was basically just a more advanced version of the previous skull. I wanted to make sure I somewhat had the proportions down on like a visual level, not necessarily knowing all the ratios because I can keep studying that, but that I knew how a lot of this stuff fit together visually. So I made sure to show that the front teeth go below or go above the back teeth, and that these back teeth don't line up exactly, so it creates kind of like a interlocking teeth. Showing that the hole that the nose is attached to, the tip of the nose and the nostrils are actually below that, and that this is about 2/3 down where the eye socket is. So the top of the hole of the nose is about 2/3 down, and then this ridge is like at the same level as the eye socket, and that's the same ridge that would be like protruding. So that's how you can get kind of the whole nose shape. I think this might actually be a little bit high, so I think it's like 1/3 down. That looks more right. So these notes down here are just talking about stuff that Kim Jung Gi said in the beginning of his speech, and this was all done through a translator, so it wasn't like totally in real time, but I think the translator was pretty good. He said rather than just like doing what figure drawing is, where you're looking at someone and you're drawing them as you see them, and you're like looking down and looking up again, and you're like drawing this person doing whatever. It's better to watch, internalize how that visually looks, and then draw it. And doing that will help your visual memory. He said that his visual memory wasn't always as good as it is now, and that it's something that he worked to improve. So there's hope for some of us. I know that I'm never going to be as good as Kim Jung Gi, but it's nice to at least think about being able to get closer. So this is actually from when he started to talk about perspective. At first, he drew like a caravan of vehicles, and I'm not going to be able to do this, but I can at least talk about what it was. He drew like a caravan of vehicles like this. There was like a tank, and there was some trucks, and like a car and a van. I think this was like a motorcycle, like a sidecar. And then he had like a plane here. And he drew that, and then he started saying like, alright, if I'm like from this tank's perspective looking this way, and he would draw a box and draw like, the tank like that, and then have like the Jeep here like in perspective. It would be perfect, and then he'd have like the motorcycle and like the plane you could see, and he just kept on like moving around and choosing these spots to look from, and it was incredible to watch. But like he wasn't really teaching at this point, it was mostly just like a drawing demonstration. And then I think I can try to show this because there are a few GIFs online. Let me switch with browser. You can still see my screen down here, but this is Kim Jung Gi's Twitter account, one of them, and there's some stuff from this. So this is some guy raised his hand and asked how he chooses like where the horizon line would be, and Kim Jung Gi seemed to like take offense to that, and he was like, "This is a ridiculous question. It's your world. Like, so why would you not like know what the perspective is?" And then he just started drawing these like really fast outlines of people, just like super fast, and saying you could draw like a person from this perspective, and he like was just spinning the person vertically, and you can see him doing that here. I don't know if this will work. Okay, so it is. He just drew this person from all these different directions, and then he was like, and you can do this like cylinders and then draw people inside of them, but like based on what you want to show, you're like choosing the worlds. And then he drew like a Titan with like a tiny guy looking up at the Titan, and then he drew the Titan from above with him looking down at this tiny guy and like a bunch of buildings around it. But he was basically just saying how to really get perspective, you have to think more in 3D and think about like drawing boxes. And he can kind of do this just from practice, but what he normally does is like makes an invisible horizon in his head based on the perspective he wants to draw, and then he'll like note a point in the distance and kind of like mentally draw perspective lines in his mind. And I can't do this, so he'll like not draw these on the paper, but he'll have them in his brain, and then he can just like start drawing boxes. And he drew a bunch of things like showing drawing boxes, and it was cool to watch. And he just like do like a whole shitload of boxes, and I can't do what he was doing, but he started drawing like really advanced like human figures inside of the boxes, like flying and floating and stuff. I can draw a couple. So he drew a bunch of boxes like that, and then started just putting people inside of them, and that was equally crazy. Oh, he also mentioned that this plane, he had seen Dunkirk and he liked the plane in it, and then he just like knew what that plane looked like and was able to redraw it. So this is my attempt. Oh, fuck, keep hiding that layer. This was my attempt at drawing his Titan. So you can see this little dude down here, and then he drew like a guy from this low perspective looking up. I tried to draw a couple of his like turning humans. My lines are much messier as the translator. And then this is the same Titan from above, and he made a joke that it was peeing on the man. He's actually a pretty funny dude. Alright, so that is that. Here is me attempting to draw boxes, and he was saying that a lot of people, and I happened to do this not intentionally, but I had drawn a bunch of these boxes, and then with his, he was able to like draw these lines back, and they all like met perfectly at like a vanishing point, and mine are like all over the place. So actually, I think this was the one. He drew a bunch that had the same vanishing point, and then he drew a bunch like this, where the vanishing points were like all over the place. And he was like, is it possible for this to exist in real life? And people were kind of like, yes, maybe. And then he just like was like, it can. And then he drew like a bunch of planes. He was like, when you're flying planes, you can have multiple like vanishing points. So it doesn't really matter if all of the objects can just be at whatever position. So he said on planes you can do it, and then also on ships on like the ocean, it can be like that. Yeah, so his suggestion was to start trying to like draw a cube and then drawing a person inside of that cube. So he gave this example of like a guy kind of laying inside of a box. And then he was like, here's that same guy, like if you were to rotate the base of the box this way. And then from here, he was like, do you know where the center of a person is if you were to like take a human and like fold them in half? And a lot of people were like, not really. But he said that the center is like just about here. So if you like look at the groin, go a little bit above it, it's like a little bit lower than halfway between like the belly button and the bottom of the groin. Like here. So he was like, if you're drawing people inside of a box, you can take that box, divide it in half, and know where that halfway point is. And then from there you can like divide it in half again, and that's like where the knee would be. If you divide it in half again, that's like where the shoulder is. And then from there, it's just like a matter of getting better at perspective. So if you say like, all right, this is the center of my box, here is this point, here is my shoulder, here is my knee, and you're able to like make sure that those points are in 3D and lining up with what they should, then you should be able to draw the perspective correctly. So it's not easy to do, obviously, but I think it's something good to practice, and that's something that I want to practice in the future. He said that you have to understand cube, and that he got a lot better at drawing once he understood cube. So, understand cube, everyone. I think this is the last page, and this I continued to try to draw cubes. My desire to understand cube. But he also started doing a bunch of drawings of this like old guy, and he was during this time talking about how a lot of artists nowadays just use Photoshop and they don't really focus on learning fundamentals. And he thinks that fundamentals are really important and that you should continue to practice them. So like learning perspective, learning anatomy, getting good at that stuff. And then he started doing, I'm going to switch over to that other browser screen again. So the last thing that he was doing was this really crazy watercolor example. He had drawn this like old guy a bunch of times in different styles. He drew it in like a comic book style, and then like an Asian like manuscript style kind of, and then he just started doing like watercolor paintings of him in different styles. And he wasn't sketching at all. He would just like take watercolors and put them down, and they'd eventually become these like basically photorealistic looking drawings, paintings of this guy. And he was just on like newsprint. He wasn't even on like fancy paper or anything. So that was pretty crazy. But this was him with his paint palette. Oh my god. paint palette right here. And him talking about how kids these days don't practice fundamentals. But yeah, that's basically what it was. There was a lot of just like drawing examples and drawing demos. Yeah, I think you should keep practicing. Like, I think drawing people's stuff that already exists is important. And I think it's good to like learn what you can through copying. But learning fundamentals, according to Kim Jung Gi, is also super important. And if you can, try not to draw directly. And this is something that I really need to focus on myself too, is instead of just like looking at a person like this, I have this drawing over here, instead of looking at it and trying to like match exactly what I'm seeing, like I should look at it, remember as much as I can about it, and then come back and try to draw what I remember. And he was really adamant that doing that can like increase your visual memory like a great deal, and that his visual memory like used to not be what it is today. This looks like garbage because I haven't really been drawing. But that's basically everything that was at the workshop. So I can go back through my note pages again just to kind of do a review. So, and obviously I don't remember all of the exact proportions, but being able to break down, Procreate, just create a new layer when I do that. Breaking down the skull into like this square shape, and then adding a chunk onto the bottom, and then being able to like divide that up. So I need to like look up what all these measurements are, but it seemed to doing it this way was a pretty good way to figure out how to draw a skull. And something that I've been doing is like knowing kind of the generalized shape of the skull is like when I'm trying to draw someone in a coffee shop, like drawing like a really simple skull like this, like really lightly, and then like building that person's face on top of it. So then being like, all right, their eye socket would be there, here's their eyebrow, like continuing this like skull bone into their nose, their lips be here. That's something I've been doing in coffee shops a lot more. And I find that it has been helping my head proportions. Something to think about in your drawing. They spent like a half hour talking about this shape and how from here it like protrudes. Crazy. That's that. Oh. So remember that palm up equals that, palm down equals that. So when you're drawing someone with a palm up, they should have kind of like this flat area gap above their forearm. And if the palm's down, you wouldn't have that. Make sure when you're drawing teeth that you draw them in perspective. So the teeth towards the edge wouldn't be fully visible, and the teeth that are directly facing you would be, kind of like a bottle cap. Something I need to do as well is like learn where all the facial muscle connections are. So this one is talking about these are connected to the top, and when you flex them, you get wrinkles that are perpendicular. These muscles around the eyes and around the mouth are circular muscles, and that when you raise your chin muscles, you get like a lot of divots, and when you increase these muscles, you get wrinkles that are perpendicular again, so that's where you get crow's feet from. These muscles here kind of pull down and in, that's where you get the eyebrow crease from. This page is basically just Kim Jung Gi's crazy at spinning people in 3D. Draw a lot of boxes, try to divide people in half. God, I fucking Procreate. I know this is all me, but I'm blaming Procreate on it. Yeah, I feel like recently I'm more confident drawing on paper as well. I really need to get back into digital. Like I did this the other day for a friend's birthday, and I thought that came out pretty well. But I generally feel a lot more comfortable on paper nowadays. Yeah, something I need to focus on based on the Kim Jung Gi stuff is being able to draw boxes in perspective and then like divide up into quarters and like align those quarters with like where these pieces are. That's something I'm going to be working on my own. And then finally, practice fundamentals and draw a lot of old men, I guess. Yeah, that's it. That's my Kim Jung Gi workshop experience. I hope this has been at least a little bit helpful. I know I don't remember all the skull proportion stuff, but that's something you can probably look up on your own. Thanks for stopping by. I'll probably have an actual stream where I draw stuff tomorrow. But thank you for stopping by, Seth, and I hope this archive is helpful for people on YouTube. But until then, have a nice day. Later.